Welcome to today's episode of the Online Course Creator Show. I'm so glad to have you here today, and I really hope that you've clicked on this episode because you want to experience something different with your first launch or your next launch. So this episode is all about how to stop hiding and start showing up in your next launch. So I think that this topic is not talked about enough. Like, there's so many people sharing like strategies and all of that kind of stuff, and that is all great. Like, we need strategy, but there's way more to actually launching an online course than that. And I guess I've had a front row seat to that because I actually work privately with people, and people do share with me as they're going through the launch process exactly what's coming up. And I've also seen firsthand what can happen when, your mindset and stuff is not on board with your launch, and that can be a massive, massive problem. So I am really certain that launching is just as much about you and your own personal growth as it is about making money and getting results. And often once you get that first bit sorted out, then that's when the real money can be made, and that's when the huge results actually start coming in. But if you're operating from a feeling of being out of alignment with the launch or your offer or any part of the process, or it could be that your mindset is holding you back, or you're operating from an ungrounded place, like basically your nervous system is out of whack, and that's actually holding you back from launching in a way that's going to be really powerful and get those results that you deserve. So I am talking about this today because I know it is not talked about enough. I think there's a situation here where most of the people who are talking about launching are marketers, and I'm a marketer, have been for nearly 15 years, and people think it's kind of like not in their realm, but I guess I've got the insight because I'm also a life coach. Even though that's not the area I specialize in at all, I have that insight, and that's why I feel like I can talk about this, whereas other people don't talk about it, or they just don't want to help people that have got a bit of a wobbly mindset, But the reality is that most of us have to do work on our mindset at some point, and it really does go hand in hand with launching if you want that success that you deserve. Now, I do have a free guide to go with today's call, so you can download that. It's also called How to Stop Hiding and Start Showing Up in Your Next Launch. And you can find that at loublakely.co/mindset, and that will get delivered to you straight away, where I share more with you around what you can actually do to support yourself in the area. So go and grab that guide. It's at loublakely.co/mindset. So firstly, I'm going to talk about some signs that it is your mindset that is holding you back and it's not strategy. So after you hear these, you should be really clear. Do any of these ring true for you? Okay, so there's actually 4 stages of a launch that I'm going to talk through. The first is you're thinking of creating a course, but you're not doing it. So you're not taking action at all. So how do you know if the reason that you're at this stage is actually due to mindset wobbles and you're holding yourself back, rather than the normal excuses we give ourselves, like, oh, we don't have time right now and that kind of thing? Usually there's actually a deeper reason, there's a deeper thing going on. So the first sign that it's your mindset holding you back is you've already got the course, you've already got the strategy, you've already got the step-by-step system, but you haven't actioned it. Like, you could have even, I would say if you're in this category, you've most likely actually taken some lessons, you've dived into the content, you've looked at what you need to do, and that's about as far as it's gone. And you are committed to this, you want this, but you haven't actually moved on it. So that's definitely a giveaway sign. If you've got all the tools at your fingertips, you're still not doing it. Another sign is that, if you are a done-for-you service provider, which is who I work with, mostly in those people wanting to transition into like that more freedom-based business model with online courses and coaching programs and all of that kind of stuff. If you want that and you're busy, because let's face it, service providers are extremely busy, but yet you're not creating time to make it happen. You really want it, but you're not intentionally going, okay, how can I bring in, create some free time in my busy schedule to actually make this happen, because I know that I want this and I know I want to move to a business model that is going to allow me more time freedom, financial freedom, all that kind of stuff, and it's not related to that time for money exchange. So if this is you, I've actually created a series on Instagram about this. It's called the Freelancer to Freedom series. It's in 3 parts, and it actually walks you through exactly what I did to create the time when I was extremely busy doing digital marketing services for other businesses. I was booked out. I was tired. I had no spare time, but I knew I didn't want to continue that way. So I actually share in that series on Instagram exactly how I created the time. And those 3 things that I share, they worked amazingly. And that is really the only reason that I started with online courses back in, I think that was 2017. Yeah. So go and check that out. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you can find me at @LouBlakely_. And, you'll just find it in my feed, but it's also in my highlights. So definitely recommend that. But just back to that point, if you're like just using that as an excuse, like I'm too busy, I don't have time, I'm too tired, there's no way I can fit this in, then you can actually create the time. I fully guarantee that everyone can find the time if they really want it and they're committed. Okay, so another sign is, you want to do this, but you keep saying, I'll do it later in the year, I'll do it next year, when really you would like that business model sooner rather than later, because the reality is it's not about just doing one launch. It's actually a process and it takes time. And, it could take 2 or 3 months to actually do your first launch. So you do need to start sooner rather than later and stop putting it off. So if you're sitting in that, then I challenge you to think, is it actually those things that are holding you back, or is it the fact that you're scared? You don't know what the outcome's going to be, and you'd rather stay where you are than actually step forward and, go for it and see what happens. Okay, so the next stage is the pre-launch phase, which is when you've started doing your pre-marketing, and this is before like a launch event, like a webinar or a challenge or something like that. Like this is before that, like before you start even inviting people to that. It's when you start doing consistent marketing, and, maybe I'll record a episode on actually what this point of the launch actually consists of. And you'll learn that, mainly in a launch strategy. But if you're at the stage, or you've noticed this from your last launches even, so things to look out for at this stage is just wanting to get it done, almost like wanting to skip this phase and just go into the invite stage to the launch event, because you feel like it's just something that feels uncomfortable and you'd rather not sit here. Another thing is over planning at this stage and not taking action. So you're getting your course perfect over and over and over again. Or, maybe that's your outline or something like that you're working on, or your sales page, or making sure your webinar is like so dialed in, that kind of thing. Now, I'm all for that, but when that's what you're working on every single day, but you're not going through the phases of actually pushing out content in your pre-launch phase, then I would say that you are stuck in the over planning, and it's time to really look at that. And that kind of relates to the next point, which is procrastination. So if you're constantly stuck in this phase and then you keep pushing the launch date out and out and out, like, oh, something's come up, I'm going to have to push the launch back 2 or 3 weeks, then I'd say that's more of a mindset issue coming up, and you need to look at that as well. Now, something else that I see often at this stage, when you've got your outline done, your course, maybe your course already exists, like it doesn't really matter if you're first time to this or you've done it before. Really, it doesn't matter. what I see holding people back at this stage is when they keep saying to themselves, something about this feels really out of alignment. Maybe it's the strategy, maybe it's the offer, maybe it's the course. But really, again, you are just scared of doing it. You're scared of the outcome. You're worried that it's not going to work. So is it out of alignment, or are you just avoiding it? Because there's no doubt, this podcast is titled How to Stop Hiding and Start Showing Up. You do have to stop hiding and start showing up with this business model. That is what is unique about it. Whereas if you're freelancing, doing done for you services for people, you do get to hide behind your desk, and maybe you just have to have a few meetings with your clients and whatnot, but you can hide. So that is what is different about this business model of online courses, is you do have to be prepared to get visible. And quite often you need to do the work around how to actually be good with that, and actually thrive in that environment. Now you might be thinking, well, I just want to hide and that's all good. But if that's you, then I really don't think online courses are for you. And I would rather you know that now than kind of try and create something that's not suited for you. However, having had conversations with so many women around creating this business model, I find that mostly people do want to be more visible. They just find it really scary and new and all of that stuff. But they do want to create that impact, and they want to create that freedom where they actually have no income ceiling anymore, and their income isn't related to the hours they have in the day and all that stuff. Like, that is the stuff that you really need to step into and live in what you want, versus how it feels out of your comfort zone and all of that kind of stuff. Because I'm a firm believer that the real growth is going to come by facing those fears and having the courage to step through that and do that anyway. So the next stage of the launch, where this kind of stuff can start showing up and it starts to look a little bit different here, is that launch event. So that's like your masterclass, your webinar, your free challenge. It could even be a paid challenge or masterclass. So this is the invite stage, and it's also when you're putting it on as well. So what needs to happen at this stage is that you're really cranking up your content, your consistency around your content into another gear, whether that's via email, social media, maybe mix, and also just showing up and presenting a live class or doing the challenge, getting people into a group and running a challenge. You absolutely need to draw a line in the sand at this point and say, I'm going to be seen at this point. You have to be seen in order to create attention, to get that visibility, for people to even know that this is going on, and you're inviting people into your world at this point. So it means getting visible. So what I see coming up mindset-wise at this point is not promoting it, just shying away from it and sending out your emails, and then maybe not even showing up on social media, just kind of, you're almost sabotaging yourself at this point. So if that's happened to you, then it is 100% a mindset issue, not a strategy issue. The problem with this is that the numbers that you get into your launch event will actually dictate the monetary reward that you're going to get from your launch. It is maths. You can reverse engineer it, and your kind of the money goal from your launch is directly related to the number of people that you can get in your world at this point in your launch. And if you don't get the number of people, then it's quite likely you're not going to hit your goal, and you're going to actually need to change your goal based on the people that you do attract. And of course, it has to be said that we're all at different levels here. This is also directly related to your existing audience size. So it's a great way to grow your audience. But you're also, if you've already done past launches or you've been consistently marketing and growing your audience, then you are going to have higher numbers here. If you don't have much of an audience, the numbers coming in here are going to feel a lot lower. And And at this stage, I often see people being disappointed by those numbers and pulling back and thinking they're not getting the response that they wished for. Therefore, they kind of just start ghosting the process or just doing the bare minimum rather than getting excited and sharing this launch event with as many people as possible. Definitely, if you feel like you're getting the wobbles at this point, it's a mindset kind of nervous system problem. And we need to look at that rather than just going straight to strategic stuff. Because you can, yes, it's good to be agile and be able to add stuff in through a launch when things aren't working or you feel like you need to do a little bit more, that's fine. But if you're not even doing what's in your strategy because you feel like that lack of response or you're not comfortable with being that loud or attracting that much attention, then it's definitely mindset. So keep that in mind. Now, the fourth stage of the launch is the open cart. So this is like after your launch event and you have officially invited people to join your program. And this is the point where they can pay and hop in and start the program. So signs that you need to work on your mindset at this stage of the launch. And I actually find this is the stage that it really all bubbles up. And if you're not prepared to do the work at this point, like the inner work at this point, then these things can happen. So the first is you're just living on your phone waiting for payment notifications, like you're refreshing. There's no like detachment from the result. You can't take your mind off the launch. You can't even go out for a walk. Like your whole day from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed is waiting for payment notifications. This is such a kind of a bad vibe to operate from when you're in that launch open cart process. Okay, so that's a sign to me that you are too attached to your results and you're making it mean something about you. Now, the next one is that you start to lose sight of what content you should be sharing around this time and start to feel quite desperate in your marketing. So any good launch strategy should map out what content you share in this open cart period, and it is going to be different to what you're sharing in the previous stages, okay? Because you're talking to the people who are already in your world and they're considering your offer. And how it looks like if you start to feel desperate in your marketing is what I often see is kind of trying to shout above the noise and just say, hey, join my offer and here's what's in it. And just talking about the features a lot and just repeating the same thing every day. That to me is a sign that there's like that feeling of desperation. I need to get more people. And if I just shout louder and louder, then I'm going to get those people in. But yeah, that's not how it works. We need to actually have a content plan for that period. And that is actually how strategy can help you with your mindset as well. Now, the next thing that quite often happens during this period is kind of like the opposite of that, really. So this could be being disappointed by the results and then ghosting your launch and not promoting it enough at all and just kind of like hiding, going to hide mode and almost pretending like you're not even launching in the first place. Now, this is a really good reason to actually have especially your email follow-up sequence after your webinar or your challenge actually already written before you go into this period so that it's not so much of a risk, and actually have that content plan all mapped out or even created and ready to roll out. That to me is like the most dreamy launch where you're kind of hands off, but you can hop in and do things where needed if necessary. It reduces that temptation to hide at this point. Now, also what I see at this point sometimes is that the expectations are completely out of line with what the data is showing us. So I spoke about this a little bit before. So at that launch event stage, your numbers of people that are going to buy your course, which is going to directly affect the cash that you're going to make from this course, is related to the number of people in that launch event. But if you expect some kind of miracle at the open cart period that is completely out of line with the launch event, then yeah, I think that the attachment to the launch results are too high, and that's a mindset thing. It's 100% a mindset thing. And from a strategic point of view, sometimes you do need to reset your goal based on the launch event stage. So if you don't get as many people in your webinar and your challenge, you're actually better off changing your goal rather than holding that and going into the open cart period and then having these expectations that are completely out of line with how a launch works. Okay, so those are the 4 stages of the launch. So, and where I see different mindset things showing up for people. So that's like thinking of creating a course but not doing it, then the pre-launch stage, then the launch event stage, and then the open cart stage. So if you heard any of that and you're like, I've done that, then you're definitely not alone. Like, this stuff is actually normal, but in order to really step into that next level and get the results that you want and not have this stuff impact you as much, like the mindset wobbles impact you as much, then definitely stay tuned, because the next thing I'm going to do is share how do you actually stop all of this from happening and affecting you in your launch. So the answer is that you need to commit to doing this work on yourself, the inner work on yourself, and doing it daily and actually building it into your launch strategy just as much as you're doing your action points around your strategy. Actually doing the inner work on yourself, and it might mean during that open cart period actually taking yourself out of the launch and going and spending some quiet time without your phone and kind of collecting your thoughts, okay? So what this is going to look like is definitely going to change based on where you are at in the launch. Now, the 2 things that I find have the biggest impact, no matter what stage you're at, but I think like the actual content of what you do is going to change based on the issues that are coming up, because those issues in the pre-planning stage are different to the open cart stage, right? So there's 2 things I recommend. First is affirmations, positive affirmations. They 100% work for me. They can help you rewire your neurological pathways and actually they can shift your energy. Like, I know if I get the right affirmation, they can shift my energy and actually step me back into a place of like grounded self-belief again when, things are a little bit wobbly, okay? And this work doesn't stop. It's not like you're going to just suddenly never have to do this. And that's why I want you to realize that to actually get through the launch in a really grounded, aligned place is you actually have to commit to this. And it's not something that you can kind of do once. It's definitely not something you can do once, okay? Because there's going to be new levels, new devils, as they say, that you're going to step into. Affirmations. The second one is a journaling practice. So I struggled with journaling for so long, and then I realized I was completely overthinking it. So you can just write, okay? So every day take this time, dedicate that time to sit and reflect and journal on what's coming up. And then as you put down on that page what's actually coming up, keep diving deeper and start asking yourself clarifying questions. So how do you feel? Why do you feel the way that you do? Ask yourself, is that really true? I love that question. What else? Ask, as we dive deeper, is it really true? What's the worst case scenario? I actually find this one really effective, because once you write down the worst case scenario, you realize it's not that bad. And then you can ask yourself, can you handle that? And usually the answer, by the time you get to this, you're like, yes, I can handle that. And then you can start to look at, well, what's the best case scenario? Can you believe that? And then start to operate as though it's already happened. So you can see from an energetic viewpoint how this can shift you from a stage of feeling like I'm really in it right now to actually coming out of it and being at a much higher frequency just from having done this process, because this will shift how you are feeling 100%. It will totally shift how you're feeling. Then you can step back into, okay, what's my intention for today? What do I need to do to make that happen? How do I step into kind of my best self and actually show up and be visible and have that courage? So that's what this helps to do. And quite often when you're doing this journaling practice, what you're doing is creating awareness of what is actually happening rather than just burying it deeper and deeper. Once you create awareness, then just simply knowing what's the issue can quite often just shift it on its own. Sometimes you do have to go deeper, and that's what mindset coaching is for. But you can actually start to shift that belief as well. Like shift that belief that is holding you back, because it all comes back to unconscious beliefs, okay? Now, another thing that I want to talk about, it's not so much mindset focused, but it is about nervous system regulation, and it is vitally important when it comes to showing up, being visible, and actually it's important in all areas of life. It's something that I actually learned about after I learned all about mindset, as I trained in NLP and life coaching, that kind of thing. That's where I learned all about the mindset focused stuff and the neurological pathways and unconscious beliefs and being able to shift them and all of that kind of thing. But nervous system regulation is actually something that I really started to learn about when I kind of had my health episode and I was in extreme burnout. And if you've been around for a while, you most likely know that story. I do talk about it a little bit on the podcast. I haven't shared a big deep dive into that, but this is where I realized that nervous system regulation is so important. And I believe it's very important as well in the launch situation, because quite often what happens in launching is that we go into the launch and we operate from fight, flight, or freeze. And we know that feeling. We all know that feeling, like where we feel like it's just not good, like we just can't relax. We just constantly, it depends which one of those you're actually in, because they're different, like fight and flight and freeze are all different. But that's where you can start to operate from, and it is not enjoyable for you. And I think it can be seen by the people who are following you as well. So the way that you can regulate your nervous system is things like breath work, meditation, if you're able to have that control where you can actually get to that meditative state. There's also things like ice baths and all of that. All of these things help to regulate your nervous system. So what I want you to do is actually find a practice that works for you. It is so important. I'm actually looking at adding some support in this way into my upcoming program, which I think is going to be amazing, because I think that if we're operating from a place where our energy is all over the show and we can't control it, then of course that's not going to help us. And we actually want this to be as stress-free as possible. Like, I understand that launch week is going to be different to having no launches on, but how do we actually become the person that can hold the launch and not go into a big cave afterwards and have to sleep for a week? How can we step into being that person who can hold it? Because I believe that once we're at that point, then it is inevitable that we're going to have massive business success. So that's why this stuff is so important. It's not just about your strategy. Yes, your strategy is important, but I want you to commit to actually looking at this stuff, because it's going to really help you stop hiding and start stepping into who you need to be able to get very visible and have those big launches. So find a practice that works for you. It is so important. So I really hope that you enjoyed this episode today. I know it's a little bit different than what most launch strategists talk about, but I'm going to change that. I think that launching is actually quite a holistic thing, and it's something that we need to bring all of ourselves to. So if you haven't already, go and download that free guide, which is called How to Stop Hiding and Start Showing Up in Your Next Launch. You can get that at loublakely.co/mindset. Thanks so much for listening today, and I will see you on the next episode. Thanks, course creators and go-getters. You're incredible, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe in your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to find out more about what I offer, head across to loublakely.com. See you next time.